right, physical science. So the next matter subject we need to go over is this idea of density. Density is, and I hope to have a little activity for us, a little demo activity. But density is a measure of the amount of mass of a substance per unit volume. So how much mass does something have compared to how much space it takes up? Another way to think that I like to think about density is, what is the thickness of the substance? So the mathematical equation that describes density is you get the mass of the substance and you divide it by the volume of the substance. The units that we usually use are grams per milliliter, but hopefully you remember the standard international unit for density would be kilograms per meter cubed, which are a little weird. We usually use grams per milliliter, but this is not the SI unit. I'm not going to have that on the test, just FYI. All right, and a little bit of background about buoyancy. The buoyancy of a material determines if the substance or object will float, and that is dependent upon the buoyant force. Fluids again are anything that can flow, so fluids would be liquids or gases. All right, so fluids exert an upward force on matter, and that force is called buoyant force. Remember, gravity pulls down, buoyant force goes in the opposite direction and pushes up. With that in mind, we have something called Archimedes' principle that says the buoyant force is the upward force applied to an object in a fluid which is equal to the weight of the fluid that the object displaces. If the buoyant force is greater than the weight of the object will float in the fluid. If the buoyant force is less than the weight of the object will sink. And if they are the same, then the object floats submerged, just kind of sits there, but it's submerged in the fluid. And what this leads us to has to do with density. When you're in physics, we'll talk about it more in detail, but if the density of an object is less than the density of water, the object will float in water. And if you put that object in other materials, if the density of that object is less than the density of the material of the fluid that it's in, then it will float in that fluid.